And we are live. This is Sound Booth Theater Live. And today is part 3 of the cold reads for Everybody Loves Large Chests, Volume 11, TOL-SAROTH. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you for waiting around. Appreciate you. Looking forward to getting back into the box. I hope you all are having a good day so far. Take the shoes off, kick the shoes off, get comfy. I think I'll take off my hoodie too. Ha! Devtron says, you scared me. Logged in here an hour ago and forgot. I did it on purpose. That's why I was late. I was like, oh, if I come in on time, Devtron will completely expect me. But if I'm 5 minutes late, I can get him. Totally my thought process. All right, so yesterday we experienced Boxxy's a little bit of an intervention. He's of course addicted to the breast milk of the hilt tree. Ambrosia. I think that's her name, right? Her name's Ambrosia. And he's trying to kick it now. And then we were with Lavendar. She was in one of the artifact rooms, and two of the swords were were arguing with each other. It was pretty fucking hilarious, actually. And yeah, that's where we're at. Let's see what's going on right this second. Okay, and now we are in Fizzy's workshop as Boxxy is trying to do some enchanting or something. Upgrading. He's trying to upgrade. And Fizzy's kind of making fun of him. So, Boxxy's in Kira form. And, yeah, I guess just practicing upgrade abilities. Rees Donabauer. Hey, Jeff, any plans finishing the Industrial Strength Magic and Eternal Dominion series? So, finally, I can talk a little bit about Eternal Dominion. Another production company has taken over, but we're still completely willing to publish, and it's going to be good. I think maybe you guys might miss Zach, but he's just unavailable. So there's another company that's picked it up, and so just watch out for that. Eternal Dominion Volume 14, Book 14, should be coming out not too long from now. Sorry, got a disturbing text. Anyway, so, yeah, that's being worked on. Industrial Strength Magic, I think Book 3 is being worked on right now. 2 is already out, right? No, it's not. Sequel.exe is, so that's going to be coming out soon. I know I did voices for it. I know I'm done with all my voices, so it should be not too long. Yeah, it's on its way. So watch out for that as well. All right, so I am just about to get started narrating here, but I want to remind you guys that Sound Booth, the app, is now available. We have changed the look. We have changed the... I mean, we're starting a new company with Sound Booth, so we will have a a completely dedicated company working on distributing audiobooks for people, and Sound Booth Theater will just be a part of it. Yes, Industrial Strength Magic, you should check it out. Industrial Strength Magic is a big hit for us, so I highly suggest you, highly recommend you check it out. I would like it if we were able to bring it back to the platform at some point. We'll see how that does. Yeah, he has read it. He needs the second one. But yes, Sound Booth. We are, in the process of picking up more publishers, creating spaces for our publishers to do all their marketing themselves, and just draw more people to us. And I'm really excited about that prospect. We are also slightly cracking open the gates to individuals who want to publish to Sound Booth. We are trying to be very careful when it comes to that. We don't want to be like ACX, where it's just like, oh yeah, just come in here and publish whatever you want. We do want to try and keep a certain amount of standards here as far as that's concerned, because it's just not going to be an open interface that you just load whatever into. And we have to keep track of everything. We have to keep track of how our customers are doing, how our partners are doing. And we want to focus a bit more on publishers first, because they have the most content at once, and they have the most resources that can actually bring more people in. Quality over quantity on SBT. I agree. So that's coming up, guys. We're talking to people already. Author Steve Rowland has a meeting with one of our Sound Booth reps tomorrow, so he may be publishing his stuff to our platform. Tristan Christenberry says no AI. Agreed. No AI audiobooks on our platform. We have to be firm on that. Yeah, because Sound Booth is about actual audiobooks, like actual creators, actual care for the audio that you're listening to. And AI just shits on that, right? So we just can't do it. We can't do it. Anyway, yeah, so guys, go to soundbooth.app. Look at what we got available. We have the Dungeon Crawler Carl Audio Immersion Tunnel. We have Kaiju Battlefield Surgeon, both Matt Dinneman titles. We have, relevant to this stream, we have Small Chests Are Fine Too. If you haven't listened to the spin-off of Everybody Loves Large Chests, Fizzy's story, we have it available in both classic audiobook and cinematic audio form. So there's 7 episodes of the cinematic audio. There's just one full classic audiobook product narrated by Dory Sachs, who, as you guys know, took over the role of Fizzy so that I don't have to do her voice like this. It really sucks. It really sucks for me to do that voice anymore. So, yeah, so you can check out Small Chests Are Fine Too. Also by Neven Iliev, one of my favorite productions. Something that he wrote that I like even better than Everybody Loves Large Chests is The Stars Have Eyes. That one is 15 episodes, but still I think it's just under $30. Let me check that out. Soundbooth.app. I have to say, man, I really like our new website. Let me go ahead and share that with you guys. I really like our new website. It looks better. I feel like shopping on this thing. It's just a good looking format. Let's view series here. Let's look at Dungeon Crawler Car. Oh no, let's look at The Stars Have Eyes. All right. So each episode is just $2, and the whole season is $24.99. So it would have been 30 if you bought if you bought each episode individually. I'm sorry, it would have been 28 because the first episode is free. But if you buy the whole thing, you get a little discount. Here's the buy season get for $24.99 button. I highly recommend it, guys. And if you just want to test out the first episode, it's right here. Get it for free. Guys, this is okay. If Everybody Loves Large Chests is about a sociopathic monster that just wants to devour everything in his path, The Stars Have Eyes is about a sociopathic monster who wants to become more human. So instead of this being just a big kill fest, uncaring, cold, and admittedly funny and entertaining, Stars Have Eyes is a wholesome romantic comedy. Still with a sociopathic monster of incredible abilities. So if you have not already, go ahead and check it out. I'm so proud of this production. This is one of our first ones. It's still one of our best. The performances are amazing. Annie does a perfect job playing Maggie, Magrithlack the Observer. We have a great cast. Will Watt and Gary Furlong take up a lot of the other characters. We also have Hannibal. What's his name? Hannibal. I forget his name. In episode 14. Where is he? Hannibal Hills. That's right. Okay. He plays the main character's dad. We just have a lot of great performances in here, and the music. The music is my favorite part. I can't tell you what the music is, but if you listen to it, I think you'll be able to identify some of it. So please go check out The Stars Have Eyes. It's just so proud of that production, and you will squirt a few in the last 2 episodes, I promise. All right. So, back to TOL-SAROTH. Ooh, The Stars Have Eyes is next on my list, says Water Kangaroo. Water Kangaroo also asks, when is the grinding coming out? Well, I can't say when it's coming out, but I can say that I plan to start narrating it right after this book. I was going to do Chrysalis right after this, but I want more ammunition for our platform, and I think the grinding is the perfect thing. So Matt's already agreed that it's going to go on the platform. So let's see. I would say the book is probably 50 to 60,000 words. So we're looking at like about a 6-hour audiobook. We're probably going to charge just $10 for it. So this is a great jumping on point to the platform. It'll be exclusive to our platform at least for a while. So yeah, watch out for that, guys. The Grinding. I believe it was Matt's second or third novel, but it's excellent. I have read it. I will be probably pre-reading it this week again, because I enjoyed it that much. And yeah, we'll probably have Matt on to one of these cold read streams so that we can zero in on the main character's voice. He'll probably say that I won't need to change much because it's like he's like a little Filipino guy. But I don't think he's like I don't think he's from the Philippines. I think he's just genetically Filipino, but I'm not sure. I'll have to clarify that with him. I'm not narrating with a Filipino accent. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Okay. Rescore asks, hey, Jeff, I purchased a physical copy of this that looked like a cassette tape during Lit RPG Under the Sea. Any chance of seeing more titles in that format? Love that little thing. Of course. Real quick, go to merch.sound, or is it soundbluetheater.com/merch? One sec. soundbooththeater.com. There's a merch link, merch.soundbooththeater.com. You can find, so the Dungeon Crawler Carl Audio Immersion Tunnel is sold out. And so is Kaiju Battlefield Surgeon. But we still have The Legend of Zero, Epithet Erased, Vampire Queen, The Stars Have Eyes, Monster Hunt, Relict Legacy, Earth Force, Dino Adventures, Seance, Deep Madness, and our greatest hits. So there's plenty of tapes on our merch store for you guys to purchase. Will you be doing cold reads of the grinding? Yes, go full Texas drawl instead for no reason for the accent and the grinding. Yes, I will do that. And so I'll troll Matt. I'll be like, how about this one? And they're all going to have Texas drawls. All right. Here we go. So now all I need to do is pull up the script and we're ready to go. Okay, let's see here. Oh, wait, we have Fizzy in the scene as well, so let's go ahead and keep her there. Bring Annie there. Okay. Get rid of this one. More N5s? Okay, good. There. Better? Kira asked in her usual sweet voice. I guess? The golem winced. Honestly, it still creeps me out how you can change your personality like that. Practice makes perfect. The beastkin shrugged. Speaking of practice, why are you so obsessed with this drill design? I'm trying to refine a delivery system for the Dragonthorn. Boxxy replied as it turned its attention back to the workbench. The payload worked great once I got it into Aaron's back. But I need a better delivery method than driving it in like a nail. And your solution is a drill on a stick? Let's make sure Dory knows. Dubious. No, an exploding drill on a stick. Again, with the explosions? The golem shook her head. With such a one-track mind, it's no wonder you can't get to artificer level 50. You need to diversify your... I actually hit that earlier this morning. Later, water kangaroo. Kira casually informed her. What? Why didn't you say anything? It slipped my mind. Slipped? It took a surprising amount of effort for Fizzy to stop herself. Nagging Boxxy about not giving her enough attention would be useless at best and rage-inducing at worst. She had volunteered for the untasty task of monitoring the shapeshifter during its withdrawal, so she needed to put its needs ahead of her own. True, it was still wearing the herpes underneath Kira's tanned skin, but machinery could always fail, and the shapeshifter could find a dozen ways to slip out of its urges. But machinery could always fail, and the shapeshifter could find a dozen ways to slip out of it if its urges got too strong. Just got a bleep bloop from Discord. Why is Discord bleep blooping? Aaron. Okay, cool. Sorry. Got distracted. Fuck you, Discord. So, she quelled her annoyance and steered the conversation in a more productive direction.
I take it you've already made arrangements to advance the job? Yep.
Oops.
Though you probably won't like them. What? Why wouldn't I?
The golem's voice trailed off as realization dawned.
Oh, sweet Josephine. Jessie's coming over, isn't she? Yep. When? In about an hour. Fan-freaking-tastic!
The golem threw her hands in the air.
And you couldn't have told me this sooner? I'm telling you now, aren't I? This is not good. I need to clean the place up.
Fizzy wouldn't give a crooked bolt if her visitor was some random meatbag, but Jess was special. She was one of the few people the golem respected as a friend and colleague, meaning she actually cared for the woman's opinion. As such, her prideful and narcissistic personality demanded she greet Jess with an absolutely spotless home, especially since they were both artificers. Hardcore tinkerers saw their workspace as an extension of themselves, almost like a second set of clothes. Fizzy usually kept hers in a state best described as organized chaos. It was comfortable, and she knew where everything was, even though it looked messy. However, looking messy was exactly the issue. Much like changing out of one's ugly, casual attire and into something prim and proper. Much like changing Much like changing out of one's ugly, casual attire and into something prim and proper, the golem wanted to greet her friend with a tidy workshop. She didn't have a lot of time, so the first thing she did was bring all 3 of her empty mithril dolls to life with animate armor. Fizzy, plus, minus, and null proceeded to organize the tools, arrange the materials, sweep the floors, put away the Doomsday device schematics, and generally tidy the place up. Fuck. Fizzy, plus, minus, and null proceeded to organize the tools, arrange the materials, sweep the floors, put away the Doomsday device schematics, and generally tidy the place up. With 4 perfectly synchronized bodies on the job, the entire facility looked spick and span with plenty of time to spare. It was about 2 in the afternoon when the old warehouse's doorbell rang. Prompting Fizzy and Kira to emerge from the workshop's heavy steel door and greet their fellow tinkerer. Oops. So I don't remember what Jessewick sounds like. She is in the Small Chester Find 2. So let me find that. Okay, American.
Hey, Fizzy! Hey, Kira! Long time no see.
Before them stood Jessewick Wobblebang, the socially awkward yet undoubtedly talented landmine aficionado. At least, that was who the blonde gnome was when they first met her. Oops. At least, that was who the blonde gnome was when they first met her 2 years ago. She'd worked with the spunky redhead and brilliant golem multiple times since and had grown slightly more confident and significantly more skilled as a result. However, her abilities or personality had nothing to do with her presence here today. Kira had invited Jess over because she needed an in with the Redbolt clan, who had a near-total monopoly on the artificer job's flame-spitter branch. The blonde gnome was technically here in a professional capacity, but it was mostly a personal request. That was probably why she chose to dress casually with a set of casual hempen... Hempen? Made from hemp fiber. Okay. All right, hempen. Never heard that. That was probably why she chose to dress casually with a set of casual... Let's get rid of that second casual. That just sounds bad. That was probably why she chose to dress casually with a set of hempen overalls over a simple red shirt. There was still little question as to her occupation, what with the multi-lens goggles on her forehead and the strange tools dangling from her belt.
Hey, Jess.
Kira squatted with an extended hand.
How you been? Oh, you know, so-so.
She gave it a light shake.
Much better now that I'm finally here. Why? What happened? Oh, just some trouble with a colleague. It's nothing important. Well, if you say so. You gonna stand around all day, or you gonna stand around all day, or are you coming in?
Fizzy butted in.
Oh, absolutely. I can wait to see what Oh, absolutely. I can't wait to see what crazy project you two are working on. What project?
The golem was dumbfounded.
Well, Kira's letter said you needed my flamespitter expertise for an important task.
The missive had been rather vague, though that wasn't unusual for the hero of chaos. Those who knew her on a first-name basis were well aware she maintained a constant yet healthy level of paranoia. That included open distrust of third parties when it came to handling information that was even the slightest bit sensitive or personal. It was an understandable precaution given her God-given title and the not entirely positive attention that came with it, especially with the recent attack on her home. Unfortunately, this habit also caused the occasional misunderstanding, hence why Jess had shown up ready to immediately get waist-deep in some gigantic contraption's mechanical guts. She was actually looking forward to it. While the gnome had worked with both Kira and Fizzy individually, this would be the first time all three would collaborate on the same project.
Oh.
Needless to say, when the gnome found out that wasn't at all the case, her disappointment was immeasurable and her day was ruined.
So, why am I here? Actually, because I recently hit level 50 artificer. Get out.
Jess was taken aback.
Already? What's that supposed to mean? Aren't you like 18? 19? What of it? That's freaking amazing! It's not all that impressive.
Kira shrugged it off.
Fizzy hit level 50 when she was around my age, too. Yeah, but she was born a fizzle sprocket. She's had lightning in her veins long before the golem thing made that literal. Meanwhile, you've been at it for, what, 2 years? Closer to 3. Same thing! You must be some kind of mega prodigy. It is quite the feat, now that she mentions it.
Fizzy chimed in.
Yes, all right. I'm amazing and brilliant and wonderful and all that.
The cat girl's sarcasm oozed out.
Can you tone it down and hear me out already? Sorry! Can't hear you over the sound of me freaking out!
It took Jess several minutes to calm down enough. for Kira to continue. It would probably have taken a lot longer if Plus was around to voice her unrelenting positivity, but she and her fellow parallels were currently doing some last-minute packing in another room. Boxxy still wasn't sure if it liked the idea of having 3 extras share Fizzy's mind, though it could appreciate the sight of their remote-controlled shells moving about. Regardless, it was chronically low on patience, so it cut straight to the chase as soon as it was able.
I need you to introduce me to someone who can make me a flame spitter.
Oops.
I need you to introduce me to someone who can make me a flame spitter. Yeah, I kind of figured that out.
The gnome shook her head, still in disbelief.
Is that really all you needed from me? For now, yes. Shame.
Jess sighed, earlier disappointment resurfacing. Let's just... No, I'll redo it. There we go.
I was hoping you two were working on another rail cannon or something.
She had designed and built the combustion engine for Fizzy's self-propelled siege weapon the year before. It was her first time working on such a scale, and the experience had been both educational and inspirational, not to mention profitable. It was without a doubt the highlight of her career so far. In retrospect, that exceptionally rewarding project might have caused some wishful thinking when she received Kira's cryptic call for assistance.
Whatever happened with that thing anyway?
Kira pursed her lips.
Long story short, the military guys liked it and were about to order more. Then they realized just how expensive the weapon was to operate and maintain without Fizzy. I can imagine.
It would take a crew of at least 20 veteran military engineers to do what that one... It would take a crew of at least 20 veteran military engineers to do what that one shiny could. Knowledge and technical expertise aside, she was also a walking power generator with the ability to magically mend metal objects. She also didn't require food, water, sleep, or bodyguards. Put bluntly, her rail cannon wouldn't have performed half as well during field tests if she wasn't the one to operate it.
But, yeah, I'd be more than happy to introduce you to Mr. Redbolt.
The gnome returned to the topic at hand.
I should warn you, though, he fancies himself something of a mad scientist, so be prepared for, research opportunities. I survived two overlords fighting each other with me in the middle. I think I can handle some nutty geezer,
Kira stated confidently.
Weird flex, but okay. So where does Mr. Redbolt live? Hold on. If we're doing this, I'm going to need a little something in return. A bit of a give and take, you know?
This was no surprise to Boxxy. It was immensely difficult for someone not affiliated with a major gnomish clan to get a shot at artificer job advancement. It would be strange for Jess to not charge for the opportunity. She was naive, yes, but not stupid. Boxxy was prepared to meet whatever price she asked, even if it seemed unreasonable. It was possible for the shapeshifter to get its tentacles on the flamespitter job without her help, but it would be a colossal pain in the lid. Given its volatile state of mind, the shapeshifter judged that the convenience of Jess's assistance was worth paying a premium. Aurora Boost asks, is there a way to find the soundtrack of the audiobooks? Soon! Soon.
It's only fair, but keep it clean,
Kira cautioned her.
Whatever do you mean? Don't think I've forgotten about that stunt you tried to pull on Fizzy last time. Ah! Ha! Ha!
Like most of Boxxy's acquaintances, Jess had a deviant side. More specifically, she had developed an intense interest in the golem's electrified frame, especially her service mode's smooth curves. This trait was made all the weirder by the fact that the gnome definitely wasn't a carpet muncher like Kira, but there was no denying she had a few crossed wires in that big head of hers. Let's try that again. This trait was made all the weirder by the fact that the gnome definitely wasn't a carpet muncher like Kira, but there was no denying she had a few crossed wires in that big head of hers. In the past, she'd offered Fizzy a full-body polish treatment that turned rather indecent. It wasn't that big a deal in the golem's eyes, especially since Jess was one of the few meatbags she considered a friend. Though she gave the blonde a full-power jolt once she realized what was going on, Fizzy didn't dwell on the incident even if Kira did. Or was that Boxxy speaking? It was honestly impossible to tell. Either way, the golem felt it unnecessary to chime in. Talking circles around people was more her partner's thing.
No, nothing like that. I just need some rare materials for a private project.
This request was quite innocuous, to the shapeshifter's relief.
What kind of materials? Oh, I'll give you a list. Hold on.
She pulled out a slip of paper and a pencil from her pockets and started writing down her demands.
Also, why me? Because you run across all kinds of weird stuff on your adventures. With a bit of luck, you might actually have some of these lying around.
She handed over the list, and Kira's eyebrows nearly leapt from her skull.
Force-infused vulcanite plating? Very fine magmite spike dust? And scourged orichalcum ore? You trying to blow up a mountain or something?
Any artificer worth their welding wand knew those materials were as potent as they were volatile.
That's my little secret.
The blonde giggled evasively.
So can you do it? Not sure. Some of it will be tricky. Like the Asketil
Asketil?
Like the Asketil extract. Isn't that a seaweed that only grows near underwater volcanoes? I don't know.
Jess shrugged.
What do you mean, dunno?
Jess shrugged.
What do you mean, dunno? This is your list! I haven't actually worked with the stuff, but my research suggests that it'd be perfect for my project, so I want it.
Kira sighed dejectedly as she set the list down on the nearby desk. And I'm going to get rid of that.
I'll be honest. You're asking for a lot. Assuming I even manage to get it at all, it'll make... Assuming I even manage to get it all, it'll take me a month at the least. Probably more.
This was a barefaced lie. Boxxy could instantly fulfill the request by fetching the stuff from its stores. Much like its visitor surmised, it did indeed collect all kinds of weird stuff, though she was clearly unaware of exactly how much random shit the Hero of Chaos hauled in on a base... Fuck. Much like its visitor surmised, it did indeed collect all kinds of weird stuff, though she was clearly unaware of exactly... Damn it. Much like its visitor surmised, it did indeed collect all kinds of weird stuff, though she was clearly unaware of exactly how much random shit the Hero of Chaos hauled in on a weekly basis. It was times like this that being a habitual hoarder and career kleptomaniac really worked in the shapeshifter's favor. Unfortunately, much of it was not the sort of stuff Kira would just have lying around, so it had to pretend the job was going to be a lot of bother. This would also serve as a negotiation tactic to get what it wanted right away, and maybe a little bit extra.
You're asking for a lot of my time and coin in exchange for something that might not even pan out. What do you mean?
Jess raised an eyebrow.
Just because you introduce me to Mr. Redbolt doesn't mean he'll advance my artificer job, right? That's true. Then, there's also the issue of you not really knowing what you're doing with these materials. I suspect you haven't worked with most of the stuff here, not just a skettle. Do I really need to be the one to point out how reckless that is? I don't want to see you with missing limbs. Or worse.
Jess looked away and shrank into her seat at those words. She'd heard this speech 100 times. Every flamespitter did. But it hit differently when it came from Kira. Personal history aside, she had a long-standing and well-deserved reputation for taking risks most would consider reckless, oftentimes involving explosions. If that Mary Popper was saying that this might be too much boom for Jess to handle, then it probably was.
So, tell you what.
The Catgirl leaned in a bit.
Get me into Redbolt's office and convince him to put Flamespitter on my status. After that, we can have a long, hard look at your secret project and make sure we all have our bits attached when it's done. Honestly, I don't know. I don't feel comfortable sharing my secret schematics. You're no more familiar with these substances than I am. Not yet, but I'm a quick study. Mega prodigy, remember? Besides, I'm pretty sure you'd rather not be the one to field test whatever war crime in a box you're cooking up. That's a good point, actually. All right. How about this? We go see Mr. Redbolt, and I'll see how you handle your promotion before I decide whether to bring you in on my project. However, you have to promise me to get those materials either way.
Even if rumors painted Kira as a loose cannon, everyone knew her word was as good as gold. Jess could testify to that personally, so her asking for a promise was effectively the same as requesting a magically binding contract.
I can agree to that.
Boxxy had no qualms with the arrangement. Job advancement was its main goal. Everything else was extra.
Great!
The blonde beamed.
How soon do you want to leave? Right away. I'm practically packed already. But I just got here. And I've been expecting you for a while. I also assumed we'd be going to the kingdom, so I got my travel preparations done ahead of time. Wow! Didn't even consider I'd say no, did you?
The golem shook her head.
Of course not. I'm too cute to refuse.
The redhead offered a smug smile and a coy wink.
If you say so. Anyway, it's a bit sudden, but I haven't even unpacked yet, so I don't mind. Though, is it just going to be the two of us? No, I need to bring quite a few people along, actually.
Damn it. This would be far too long a trip for Kira to just slip away unnoticed, so Boxxy had to observe its public persona's social obligations. The Nephilim triplets were a given, and Rowana was a likely addition. The elf had been especially difficult to placate as of late, The elf had been especially difficult to placate as of late, what with all the recent trouble the couple had been through. It was honestly less of a hassle to bring her with than convince her to stay.
Will Fizzy be one of them?
The golem did not respond. She had zoned out at some point during the negotiations and was now staring blankly at a wall, probably working out some formula or schematic in her head while ignoring her surroundings. It was a habit that both Boxxy and Jess were familiar with, so they knew full well not to wait for her to respond. Even though the construct was sitting right there, she might as well have been in another... Even though the construct was sitting right there, she might as well have been in another room. Anything short of a polite knock on the noggin would probably fail to get her attention. But neither of the others thought it necessary to disturb her calculations. In other words, Jess's question was aimed at Kira, whose initial response was to squint suspiciously at the tiny technophile.
What?
The blonde pulled back defensively.
Why do you ask?
The redhead pressed.
Because I want to know who I'll be traveling with, of course. Yet you ask about her and not the others? Look, I was just thinking that, a long trip might be a good chance to hang out and... And... what? And if, hypothetically, she asks me to oil her up...
She looked away while twiddling her thumbs.
I'd need to have some lubrication prepared. Right.
Her desires were plain as day, and Boxxy struggled to grasp what made this weirdo so attracted to its shiniest of shinies. Admittedly, the shapeshifter was practically obsessed with the golem. But it was a monster with a very peculiar set of sensibilities, not a supposedly well-adjusted gnome.
Anyway, she's my artificer mentor. Of course she's coming along.
Kira stated the obvious.
Great!
Jess instantly perked up.
Let's head out!
The mimic-minded monster was crystal clear on one thing. The mimic-minded monster was crystal clear on one thing about Jess, though. It did not care for her attitude. Not one bit. All right, that is that part. Let's see. Almost 40 minutes. How's everybody doing out there? What time is it? It's 1 o'clock. All right. Robin. Oh, right. Okay. DCC loot battle music. Do you guys remember a loot battle in DCC? Part 4. Well, that could have gone better, Robin grumbled.
That's one way of putting it,
Kira agreed. The youngest Nephilim had attempted to test her new monster tamer job by wrangling her first wild creature. It hadn't gone well. As it turned out, truly feral creatures were much harder to break than the captivity-bred weaklings she had practiced on. It was a common pitfall among rookie tamers, and falling straight into it was precisely why Kira dragged Robin into these monster-infested woods. In the redhead's opinion, as a professional instructor, the blonde beefcake was the type that learned quickest by making mistakes. The trip had been quite fruitful in that regard, since underestimating the monster's will wasn't Robin's only slip-up. These woods had a dozen species a newbie tamer could potentially domesticate, yet the young Nephilim had chosen one of the most difficult targets to capture. Okay, I'm getting bleep bloops. I just remembered who Robin was, that's all. I think I have to close Discord now. Okay.
Still not sure why you had your heart set on a spider of all things,
Kira grumbled.
Me either, to be honest. Maybe it's because all those arms remind me of Dad? Those are legs. Oh, right. I still think it would be pretty cool to ride them up walls and stuff.
The redhead sighed, hopped, and swung the butt of her mithril dagger at the back of Robin's thick skull. The redhead sighed, hopped, and swung the butt of her mithril dagger at the back of Robin's thick skull. Hit! Ah! The disciplinary bonk was harsh enough to make her head lurch forward, yet she took it without a peep of complaint.
Focus on the task at hand instead of dreaming about the outcome,
The redhead reprimanded.
Yes, ma'am.
Because of her short-sighted and impulsive decision, the two ladies had to make their way back to their camp while covered in various types of smelly goo and sticky webbing. Giant spiders were understandably hostile to people walking into their nests and slaughtering the colony in an attempt to steal and enslave one of their young. Giant spiders were understandably hostile to people walking into their nests and slaughtering the colony in an attempt to steal and enslave one of their young. By the time Robin and Kira had cleared out all the adult arachnids, they realized none were left for the muscular blonde to mentally dominate. The infants that hadn't been trampled in the scuffle had skittered off into the woods.
We can try again after breakfast if you want. No, I'm good. I think I've seen enough spider guts for one day. Besides, I don't want to waste any more of your time. It's fine. It didn't take that long.
All things considered, the fruitless expedition took less than half an hour since they were camping out in monster-infested wilds. It wasn't difficult to find potential sparring partners for Robin, especially with a veteran ranger around. The target-rich environment also meant that some nocturnal monsters tried to creep up on their camp last night, but were instantly repulsed by Fizzy and her parallels. The target-rich environment also meant that some nocturnal monsters tried to creep up on their camp last night, but were instantly repulsed by Fizzy and her parallels. The ever-vigilant golem was still keeping watch when Kira and Robin returned. The others had just finished preparing breakfast. Jess was dousing the flames. Oh my god. Jess was dousing the flames in the fire pit while Madeline and Lydia divvied up the freshly grilled mushrooms and sausages. Plus and Minus were keeping busy by folding up the 3 large tents and loading them into the horse-drawn carriage closer to the road. Null's mithril shell was also active, though the youngest parallel had decided that designing a tent-packing apparatus was a far better use of her time. Such a device would undoubtedly be useful, though her perfectionism guaranteed that the trip would be long over by the time she even finished the schematics. This wouldn't be the first time one of her ideas spent too long on the drawing board, and it sure as steel wouldn't be the last. A hearty breakfast and a bit of hustle later, the ladies piled into the carriage and continued on their way. Their destination was the home of Paulman Redbolt, Flamespitter Artificer Mentor and Jessiwick's employer. The old gnome resided in a rather large private laboratory in the middle of nowhere that also served as headquarters for his guild, Redbolt Dynamics. While formerly associated with one of the Big Three gnomish clans, it was a largely independent organization that distanced itself from politics so it could focus on getting actual work done. It was certainly Kira's best shot at getting her job upgrade quickly and with minimal strings attached. The redhead and her entourage wasted no time in setting off on the 6-day-long trip to the Redbolt Dynamics compound. Thankfully, Boxxy was able to dissuade its XP factory from tagging along. Its patience was at an all-time low, and it really didn't need Roanna complicating things on top of babysitting Teresa's brats. Plus, the elf had some very important matters to attend to back in Azurevale. She had to supervise the house repairs and deal with her older brother when he finally returned from Velos. He should have received word of his father's death and was expected to return while Kira was away. This was rather fortunate timing for Boxxy, as it wouldn't have to participate in whatever sappy family drama was sure to unfold upon the siblings' reunion. Furthermore, if all went according to plan, the 3-headed annoyance called the Nephilim would officially become someone else's problem as soon as it returned to Azurevale. Knowing that allowed the monster to focus most of its attention on... Knowing that allowed the monster to focus most of its attention on the upcoming meeting with Redbolt and the subsequent tinkering challenge. According to Jess, her boss wasn't against advancing independent artificers so long as they passed an extremely challenging proficiency test. Unfortunately, the tiny woman hadn't witnessed any such examination, so her knowledge of its contents was rather limited. The most useful information she had on the subject was regarding the last person to actually pass it. The individual was a beastkin woman like Kira. Although of the foxy persuasion. She was equal parts artificer and pyromancer. She combined these disciplines during the trial to prototype a handheld flamethrower she called a thermite shotgun. It was a pump-loaded firearm that used special ammo to launch highly flammable substances at targets up to 30 meters away. Apparently it was quite flashy, though not all that effective without a pyromancer's magic to back it up. Jess couldn't say much beyond that since she'd heard all that secondhand, but even this limited knowledge was enough to ease Boxxy's nerves. If combining artificer skills with abilities and practices from other jobs was sufficient to beat this exam, the shapeshifter would pass with flying colors. After all, Kira had been doing that for as long as she was an adventurer, and the monster underneath for longer still. The shapeshifter had the entirety of the trip to think of some sufficiently flashy gizmo to knock Redbolt's socks off, and imagination was something it had in abundance. Incidentally, Boxxy had no idea why it was feeling so anxious, even though the upcoming trial was, for all intents and purposes, mostly a formality. Even if it failed, there were other ways to attain the Flamespitter artificer job. Doing so through official, non-mind-controlled channels was simply the least stressful in regard to its public persona. The endeavor wasn't critical to its long-term plans, and there was effectively zero risk to its life. So why in Bridget's spicy pepper was it so goddamn nervous? Was the wrathful corruption playing havoc with its emotional state again? It had to be. Surely it wasn't anything as pathetically mundane as exam anxiety. Wherever this untasty feeling came from, it subsided once Redbolt Dynamics HQ came into view. It was quite an impressive compound, easily large enough to be called a village. 20 large buildings were situated atop an otherwise empty hill surrounded by a tall fence of metal and bone. According to Jess, its facilities included a fuel refinery, blast furnace, 3 greenhouses, wizard's tower, animal barn, According to Jess, its facilities included a fuel refinery, blast furnace, 3 greenhouses, wizard's tower, animal barn, plentiful on-site employee housing, and a 3-story mansion. The space between the buildings was filled with smaller workshops, though one structure stood out. It was a massive steel dome with 6 towering smokestacks, half of which belched dense black fumes. Not the healthy kind either, if the faint scent of burning rubber on the wind was any indication. The pollution's dangerous nature grew even more apparent as Kira's carriage pulled up to the main gate and the redhead caught a glimpse of the security detail. It was comprised entirely of dwarves and gnomes, which was hardly surprising, though all wore protective goggles coupled with metal gas masks that covered their lower faces. The necessity of such equipment all but confirmed that the air was filled with hazardous fumes and particles. Boxxy wasn't worried since it had legendary endurance and could easily repel some silly airborne pollutants. Boxxy wasn't worried since it had legendary endurance and could easily repel some silly airborne pollutants, but it did wonder if Kira should be coughing and spurting. That concern was instantly alleviated when it realized it was just the guards using such headwear. The people milling about beyond the entrance didn't have any facial protection. Halt! Halt! One of the dwarves at the gate yelled as the vehicle came to a stop. "Who goes there?"
Oh, we're here?
Janet. Jess's panicked voice came from inside the carriage, followed by a series of loud bumps, punctuated by her falling out and landing face first on the ground. She instantly bounced back up, dusted herself off, and trotted up to the masked dwarf.
Hey, Bob! I'm back.
Ah, Miss Jessie Wick. He greeted her with a nod. I see you've brought company. The guy eyed the red-haired adventurer and the single-horned knight in the horse-drawn vehicle's driver's seat. Very strange company, he added in a low voice.
Yeah, just like my letter said,
The gnome merrily replied. Letter? I'm sorry, I wasn't told of any letter.
Weird. I could have sworn I sent one out before we left.
Granted, those events were separated by a few hours, but surely a missive would arrive faster than a whole-ass carriage. Did you send it via courier or post? The dwarf inquired. Jess blinked a few times, then buried her face in her palms.
By post, then?
An embarrassed nod confirmed the guard's suspicions. Her message was supposed to inform the compound they would be receiving a high-profile guest. Unfortunately, the scatterbrain opted for the economical delivery option. Rather than express. While her message would eventually arrive, it was far too late to achieve its intended purpose. Seeing this, the cat girl hopped off her seat and injected herself into the situation, lest they be turned away on a technicality. She took off her helmet as she approached the dwarf and saluted him by pressing her left fist against her temple. The guard instinctively returned the gesture.
Apologies for the unintentionally unannounced visit. Apologies for the unintentionally unannounced visit.
She laid on the charm.
My name is Kira Morgana. I'm here to petition Mr. Redbolt for Flamespitter Artificer advancement.
Having dealt with dwarves on numerous occasions, Boxxy knew there were two surefire ways to get on their good side. The first was to offer them expensive booze as a sign of goodwill. The shapeshifter was sadly a little short on social lubricant, so it had to rely on the second method. Be honest and don't dance around the subject. As expected, the guard appreciated the direct approach. He signaled one of his colleagues to run off and relay the news, then turned back to the visitor.
I see. And what of your companions? They're rookie adventurers I'm currently training. Thought this trip might broaden their horizons. Of course, I've also brought my artificer mentor.
Fizzy disembarked the carriage. Fizzy disembarked the carriage, having timed her reveal for maximum impact. Just as planned, the sight of a fully functional mithril war golem caused quite the stir. None in stout folk society could resist looking, gawking, or staring at such a radiant construct. Fizzy immediately went into full show-off mode. She started flaunting her service mode's sleek and slender curves, then cycled through the other configurations of her physical augmentation module. Within minutes, anything resembling productivity had halted as nearly every employee had gathered in the main square in the middle of the estate to catch a glimpse of the Rustblood Juggernaut. Indeed, even though they were gearheads with no real interest in automatons or golems, the curiosity inherent within all artificers made it impossible for them to ignore the high-performance war machine in front of them. Meanwhile, Kira and the triplets were waved through security with such incredible disregard for protocol that a few people would probably lose their jobs, but that was none of Boxxy's concern. Its immediate goal was to make it inside the compound without anyone taking a hard look at the triplet-shaped international incident. Speaking of, those three quickly found something to keep themselves busy. Robin and Madeline went to the barn to check out what sort of animals were kept here, while Lydia investigated the greenhouses. With Fizzy on crowd control, Jess and Kira were free to enter the main lab under the smoke-belching dome at the compound's far end. Looking at it up close, the hemispherical mass of metal was akin to a fortress. It was huge, sturdy, and had plenty of openings along its surface for windows, balconies, or It was huge, sturdy, and had plenty of openings along its surface for windows, balconies, or armed platforms. The hex-patterned outer plating glistened with a reddish sheen in the morning sunlight, suggesting it was not mere steel. Several enormous cannons were mounted at elevated positions, all aimed at the wilderness opposite the direction Kira's group came from. Though Boxxy couldn't see what lay on the other side, Snack and Claws reported a wide field of craters stretching out to at least a kilometer away. It was surely a firing range, and given the size and payload of the... It was surely a firing range, and given the size and payload of those guns, it was no longer a mystery why the surrounding area was devoid of wildlife. Monsters and animals that weren't scared off by the thunderous booms would have been used for live target practice. The same went for any bandits or raiders with the bright idea of assaulting this place. The compound certainly didn't need the heavy security detail to repel external threats, so they were likely there to handle internal disputes. The Flamespitter artificers had a well-deserved reputation for short fuses and explosive accidents, so maintaining order in a small village of them was likely quite the undertaking. Following that logic, the heavy dome was probably there to shield especially delicate and volatile experiments from local disturbances. It was honestly a small miracle the ground hadn't cracked open with all the shock waves that pounded it on a It was honestly a small miracle the ground hadn't cracked open with all the shock waves that pounded it on a daily basis. When Kira and Jess approached the dome's entrance, they were greeted by the mechanical roar of a pair of engines as the enormous metal doors in front slid to either side. The interior was mostly hollow, with hundreds of small lights lining the metallic shell's underside. A total of 6 cube-shaped buildings spread out evenly under the circumference, all connected by an asymmetrical web of pipes, tubes, and walkways. There seemed to be a lot less activity here than outside, though Jess reassured Kira this was where the bulk of the brainwork happened. It was also where they would finally come face to face with the boss. However, Paulman Redbolt seemed significantly less enthusiastic about the meeting than they hoped. When the redhead made it into his cramped, dingy office, she found a rather eccentric-looking gnome barely more than a meter tall. She couldn't see the guy's eyes behind those multi-lensed goggles, but the rest of his face betrayed the mean look underneath. Obscured expression aside, Mr. Redbolt was clearly an elderly gnome with plenty of wrinkles, especially on his forehead. His hairline had receded and gone white with age, leaving the front half of his bumpy cranium bald. What hair remained stood on edge as if it was exploding outward from the back of his skull. The look was far too fitting for his occupation for it to be accidental. All right, let's see here. Okay, so I think I want to cast Aaron Morton as Paulman. Let's see, I need to message somebody about this. Let's do one of these. Okay. Let's go with some kind of green color. Maybe this. That's a yellow. I'll keep that for yellow. That's all right. All right.
So, this is what the fuss is about?
He grumbled while stroking his thick mustache.
I'm severely disappointed in you, Wobble Bang. Sir?
The tiny blonde was taken aback.
Whatever do you mean? First, you up and left your post in the middle of a project without seeing it through. But the prototype was basically finished. It just needed a gearbox tune-up, so I told my assistant to handle it. Yes, and you also failed to consider that Ritzby may have a talent for ballistics, but he's a lost cause with any mechanical engineering.
Jess cringed heavily as she deduced where this was going.
How badly did he mess up? Bad enough for me to fire him out of a cannon. Now you best get your head out of the clouds and back to work if you don't want the same. You're already 2 weeks behind schedule.
Nope. Nope. Get rid of that. Do this.
Yes, sir. Right away, sir. Sorry, Kira.
The tiny gnome ran off to deal with the situation, leaving Boxxy alone with the old codger.
And you! What's your deal?
The guy snapped at her.
What makes you think you can just waltz in here and demand advancement?
The shapeshifter did not appreciate his tone. The thought of grabbing him by the neck and forcing him to advance its job was a tempting one. Unfortunately, it would also be catastrophic for its facade. There were far too many potential witnesses, plus a paper trail. Even if it turned this entire compound into a crater, the follow-up investigation would reveal Kira's likely involvement. That aside, it promised Fizzy it would try extra hard to keep its temper in check. Much like that incident where the Fizzle Sprockets tried to sue her for patent infringement, she didn't want the science of artifice to lose decades of advancement because of an overpowered Boxx's hissy fit. So, Kira took a deep breath and returned the old man's hostility with a proportionally adequate amount.
Who do you think you're talking to? An upstart little twerp who can't tell her fuses from her wires. Yeah? Then think fast.
In the blink of an eye, Kira retrieved a hand grenade from her magic belt, pulled the pin, and tossed it at the ornery gnome. Is not easy to say. In the blink of an eye, Kira retrieved a hand grenade from her magic belt, pulled the pin, and tossed it at the ornery gnome behind the desk. Redbolt effortlessly snatched it out of the air and, with speed and precision befitting a master artificer, jabbed a screwdriver straight through the firing mechanism to defuse the explosive. He then disassembled it with such speed and ease it was as if he was undoing a child's jigsaw puzzle. Within a minute, the explosive device had been broken down into its base components, all neatly laid out on the gnome's fittingly small desk. He studied them carefully for several minutes while Kira waited at the door, arms crossed and a smirk on her face.
I'll admit, this is put together better than I expected. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised, considering your pedigree. Excuse me. You're Morgana, right? The one taught by Rory Fizzlesprocket's girl?
It was hardly surprising he knew this. The golem's old life had become public knowledge in Kingdom territory following the aforementioned legal dispute, and the word of her sole apprentice followed closely behind. That, and it was a certainty that Kira's name had crossed Paulman's desk since she had passed dealings with Redbolt Dynamics through Jess. By all accounts, the old coot should know exactly who he was dealing with, yet chose to act otherwise. Was he being an ass on purpose, or was he just going senile? Irksome behavior aside, Boxxy noticed something curious about the way the old gnome said that name.
You knew Fizzy's old man? You knew Fizzy's old man?
Not personally. although I did follow his work. Heard what happened to him down south. Terrible shame. His tone softened somewhat. Even if he was exiled due to ideological differences, it's impossible to deny that he was a brilliant inventor. Good to see he passed that on before kicking the bucket.
If you say so.
She shrugged.
Does that mean you'll give me what I want?
I would, if not for one glaring problem.
Which is? Which is?
Your lineage.
Huh?
You're as foreign as a foreigner can get. Personally, I don't give a damn about that, but my so-called peers do. I'll spare you the details and cut to the chase. You don't have the right ancestors. I can't help you without attracting a bunch of trouble I don't want to deal with.
But didn't you agree to teach another beastkin?
Ah, you speak of Mimi Flickerbutton. Frankly, I only got away with that because her father was a gnome from an established family, but even then I got a lot of heat. You, on the other hand, haven't a single drop of stout folk blood. If I shared Flame Spitter's secrets with you, they'd probably kick me out of the Tinkerers' Union, maybe even exile me. I'm sorry you came all this way for nothing. But my career is more important to me than some uppity youngster, no matter how gifted. Boxxy somewhat expected this. Gnomish and dwarven culture was deeply conservative and placed a lot of importance on an individual's ancestry. Even Fizzy, who was doubtlessly a brilliant artisan, could never open a shop in the kingdom since she had renounced her lineage. Her former Fizzlesprocket affiliation gave her some leeway, but Kira had no such claim. Boxxy might have been able to forge some documents if her last name sounded dwarven or gnomish, but it absolutely didn't. Though the shapeshifter had something else that might change the old man's mind.
Would it help if I said I was the hero of chaos?
Oh-ho! The gnome cracked a smile for the first time. You had my attention, but now you have my curiosity. Your actions have altered the flows of chaos. Ah, crap. Ah, crap. Given the circumstances, it was fair to say this instance of Agent of Chaos would have a direct impact on either Boxxy or Redbolt, potentially both. The shapeshifter's initial instinct was to instantly take back its words, but it resisted the urge. Wilfred's skill merely made the impossible possible. It didn't necessarily produce catastrophes. Besides, it was too late to back out without seriously jeopardizing a peaceful promotion to Flamespitter, especially if Agent of Chaos was in play. Boxxy knew from past experiences that trying to stifle the ability's unseen efforts would all but guarantee a painful outcome. The flows of chaos didn't appreciate anyone fighting against them, it seemed. On the bright side, the shapeshifter's hunch had been spot on. Kira's hero title was well known across the Republic and among most adventurers, but this remote compound was far removed from both communities. Redbolt was aware of the Redhead's artificer connections, but her divine affiliations had somehow escaped his notice. Naturally, the gnome didn't accept this claim at face value. He had an on-site scribe confirm Kira's title, and then chewed the guy out for failing to inform him the visitor was a hero. Afterward, he and Kira had a lengthy discussion regarding the social ramifications of advancing her job despite her problematic lineage. While Paulman Redbolt hated playing clan politics, it was a game he could not avoid without knowing all its rules. One such rule was the importance of prestige, and the Flamespitter branch of the artificer job was sorely lacking in that regard. It was not as reputable as artificer or automata, since it was significantly more focused on destruction rather than creation. Their reputation had only grown worse when recent developments revealed the original artificer wasn't just controversial, but a straight-up tyrant. This news wasn't directly related to the Flamespitter branch, but it still caused a significant downturn in the public's perception of the job as a whole. However, this was a chance to turn that around. Kira was the first hero. Kira was the first hero with such an advanced artificer job, and Redbolt's clique would gain a lot of prestige if she officially associated with them. Admittedly, the Redhead's personal reputation wasn't exactly spotless, but most commoners only needed to hear the hero title was attached to something before their opinion of it practically skyrocketed. Granted, this sort of publicity would have a lesser impact on the kingdom's lineage-obsessed culture since a foreigner was involved, but it would still be a considerable boost in clout for Redbolt dynamics. The guild could then use that political ammo as leverage should any of the competition try and interfere with their operations. All Kira had to do was allow Paulman's people to publicize her Flamespitter advancement and maybe deliver a few lectures at the Royal Institute of Technology as an honorary speaker on behalf of Redbolt Dynamics. First things first, though, Kira had to actually earn that promotion, same as any other Flamespitter applicant. More specifically, it was her ingenuity that would be tested. Paulman had no concerns regarding her proficiency. Much as Jess stated back in Azure Vale, anyone who could achieve level 50 Artificer in under 3 years was undoubtedly a genius and a prodigy, at least when it came to hard work. Much as Jess stated back in Azure Vale, anyone who could achieve level 50 Artificer in under 3 years was undoubtedly a genius and a prodigy, at least when it came to hard work. Anyone could build a device by following a blueprint, but inventing something new was where the job's real challenge lay. Anyone could build a device by following a blueprint, but inventing something new was where the job's real challenge lay. Redbolt valued inspiration and innovation higher than technical aptitude, and Kira had already shown promise in that regard when she and Fizzy co-developed those explosive arrows during the war. Sure, the concept was hardly revolutionary, and the golem had probably done most of the design work, but the idea had unquestionably come from the Beastkin rookie. All Kira had to do was prove to Paulman that she had, in his own words, nurtured that spark of imagination into a fireball of creativity. Colorful metaphors aside, the actual test would be quite open-ended. The aspiring flamespitter would be given a theme, free reign of a stocked workshop, and 48 hours. She had to use those resources to create a device that would showcase both her ability to think outside the box and her technical aptitude. Kira was barred from employing any tools or materials other than those provided, but was also to use whatever skills or spells she had at her disposal. She would be supervised by a guild official at all times, both to document and grade her activities and ensure she didn't receive outside help. There was also a bunch of legal stuff regarding patents and intellectual property, but Boxxy didn't give a rat's ass about those details. It barely even skimmed the forms and documents it was given before signing off on them. With the formalities out of the way, Kira was promptly brought into the examination chamber. It was a sealed and isolated environment similar to the testing range under Fizzy's warehouse. The high walls were reinforced with blast-absorbing materials, and a series of armored glass windows allowed for observation. The room was supplied with ample tools, equipment, and materials to facilitate most enchanting, smithing, and alchemical tasks in addition to mechanical engineering. Kira entered the chamber around noon, ready to begin her trial. She had foregone her usual attire in favor of protective equipment that consisted of a white coat welder's mask, safety goggles, and a set of leather gloves and boots. The girls she came with were lining the windows as spectators alongside Redbolt and dozens of his fellow artificers. Word that a hero was taking the Flamespitter audition spread rapidly, and the peanut gallery was quick to assemble. Testing, testing. The old gnome's voice echoed through the isolated room. "Give me a signal if you can hear me." The blast-proofing made the walls virtually soundproof, so communication had to be done through gestures and voice pipes. The redhead complied with the instructions. The redhead complied with the instructions. The redhead complied with the instructions and raised 2 thumbs up at the observation window above her. Excellent. You already know the details, so let's not waste any more time. The theme for your trial is delivery, and your time starts now! Kira first reached for the drawing utensils, much to the Nephilim's triplets' surprise. Graph paper was rapidly filled with lines, curves, and numbers as Boxxy hashed out its idea. It didn't have to. It was more than capable of working off a mental blueprint, but this was an official examination, so it had to observe proper procedure. The first draft took about 5 minutes to complete, and it was only then that it started rummaging through the shelves and bins overflowing with components. Guess she's one of yours after all, Redbolt commented.
What's that supposed to mean?
Fizzy responded. Went for the wiring first. Typical Sparkhead.
Oh, please. Oh, please. As if fuel lines aren't the first thing you gas huffers think about.
No argument there. Scientifically speaking, work was accomplished via energy expenditure. It didn't matter how intricate, ingenious, or innovative a machine was if it lacked power. Therefore, the first hurdle in any new artificer project was ensuring the smooth transfer and efficient utilization of energy, whether it be electrical, chemical, mechanical, magical, or kinetic. Kira would be immediately disqualified if she failed to observe this common sense.
I'm actually surprised she's thinking of incorporating an electric current,
Fizzy admitted. Oh, why's that? The old gnome raised an eyebrow.
She's had a few, unfortunate incidents that involved getting zapped. Let's just say I wasn't all that surprised when she turned to you for advancement.
Well, that and Fizzy's Arc-Light Artificer job needed to be level 75 before she could pass it on through the mentor skill, so she couldn't help Boxxy even if it wanted to. The monster's newly acquired Universal Instructor was equally useless since it could only bestow jobs at level 1. So, she's using technologies she's uncomfortable with. The old gnome stroked his mustache thoughtfully. A brash choice, but we'll see what comes of it. He wasn't opposed to the idea of adapting techniques from different occupations. On the contrary, he welcomed it. The artificer job was the most flexible of all crafting vocations. A blacksmith would never require a tailor's help with their craft, nor would an alchemist have reason to consult an enchanter beyond securing better equipment. Cross-discipline study held some benefits, of course, but only artificers truly thrived from it. People like Redbolt and Fizzy took elements, concepts, and ideas never intended to work together and combined them into something exponentially greater than the sum of its parts. This was why imagination and inspiration were vital for those who wished to master the craft. Advanced artifice was almost an art form, though few would openly admit it. By the way, is something wrong with those three? Redbolt's concern was directed at the Nephilim triplets, whose faces were practically glued to the glass window overlooking Kira.
Don't mind them. This is their first time seeing my star pupil in action. I take it it's the same for your boys by the look of them.
Redbolt raised an eyebrow and looked to the other end of the room with a sigh. He didn't expect his people to be equally enraptured. While watching a consummate professional... While watching a consummate professional at work was always a sight to behold, the redhead wasn't worth that much attention. However, he was looking at Kira from a purely technical standpoint as an expert in his field. His subordinates had a different perspective. The majority of them were single guys significantly younger than himself, and the redhead was an exceptionally attractive woman. Indeed, these people would stare at her just as hard even if she was just standing there eating a sandwich. Incidentally, Jess was similarly enraptured, though her gaze was directed at Fizzy's shapely rear bumper. For once, the golem didn't seem to notice this attention. She was far too focused on helping Boxxy cheat. Sure, the shapeshifter could have probably passed on its own, but why take chances when it could easily guarantee success? All Fizzy had to do was use her tactical readout skills magnification function to closely study her partner's schematics and handiwork. She picked out flaws and formulated suggestions that she shared with Plus. The alter ego then used her remote-controlled shell to verbally relay the information to Drea, who passed it along to her master via The alter ego then used her remote-controlled shell to verbally relay the information to Drea, who passed it along to her master via telepathy. While somewhat slow and convoluted, this method of communication was virtually undetectable. Kira's unaware audience gradually dispersed over the next hour. They'd either had their fill of the exotic beauty for now, or had to return to their own projects. A few took the Nephilim on an extensive tour of the compound's many facilities. Being surrounded by so much machinery made the girls feel as if they'd momentarily stepped into another world, and they were eager to explore. Their hosts were reluctant to show them around. Something about trade secrets, but quickly caved once Madeline started laying on the womanly charms. Redbolt returned to his duties a few hours later, though he left a few assistants to oversee the examination. People would sporadically pop in throughout the afternoon, curious to see the hero's progress. The only constant observer was Fizzy. She stood completely motionless as she did everything in her power. She stood completely motionless as she did everything in her power to stealthily assist the shapeshifter.
Evening, Fizzy.
Lydia dropped by shortly after nightfall.
Evening, Fizzy.
Lydia dropped by shortly after nightfall.
How's Kira looking? How's Kira doing? Good,
The golem answered without looking away.
She's finished her inner shell and is currently mixing the payload.
The Nephilim looked through the window to see the redhead hunched over a pot of boiling liquid that gave off a weirdly colored smoke.
Those fumes aren't toxic, I hope,
The priestess expressed concern.
What makes you say that? Miss Slythe mentioned that dark purple was generally a bad color in alchemy. They're probably toxic now that I think about it. Huh? It would certainly explain why she mixed up some kind of medicine beforehand.
Fizzy was neither an alchemist nor a breather, so the notion hadn't even crossed her mind.
Well, I suppose Kira knows what she's doing,
Lydia reassured herself.
What is she doing, by the way? Mixing the payload. I mean, what's her end goal? She's making a self-propelled explosive device by the look of things. What? Like a bomb that can move on its own? Exactly. Why? The theme for her test was delivery, remember?
The Nephilim cocked her head and squinted at the beastkin for a few moments before realization struck.
Oh, now I get it.
Though the examination was mostly free-form, the test-taker's interpretation of the theme was part of the test. Redbolt had chosen delivery for Kira because of that snafu with the letter of introduction. A self-propelled explosive certainly fit, though it was far from the most inspired interpretations he'd seen. For instance, one applicant's idea of safety was a self-assembling iron shelter, and another understood teamwork as a bomb that required two people to arm and defuse. There were no wrong answers, but there were boring ones, and Kira's was a little too on the nose to earn her any bonus points. Now, if she had made a machine that brewed, pressurized, and shot tea into empty mugs from across the room, that'd be another story. Lydia watched the redhead work for a short while before she bid Fizzy goodnight and returned to the tents the rest of the group had set up outside the main dome. While not the most comfortable, they were still better than the alternative. The vertically challenged locals didn't exactly have any rooms or beds for full-sized visitors. Several other people dropped by the sealed testing ground, though they didn't stay long. The last visitor was Redbolt, who came shortly after midnight to remind Kira that the bedroll in the corner of the test chamber was there for a reason. The shapeshifter ignored the thinly veiled recommendation to get some sleep and worked throughout the night under the watchful eyes of Fizzy and the graveyard shift overseer. The project was fairly ambitious and would not be ready in time if it had to pretend to get a full night's rest. Hunger was a far more pressing concern. While Kira was given plenty of food and water to keep her strength up, it wasn't enough to sustain a monster of Boxxy's mass and power. It wasn't even close. The shapeshifter needed about 3 times more sustenance. The shapeshifter needed about 3 times more sustenance than its beastkin persona would usually require. That was why the monster always kept emergency snacks in storage, but it couldn't take advantage of them due to the constant supervision. The most it could do under the circumstances was request larger portions, and those did help, but not by much. This was an unforeseen problem. In retrospect, the creature should have drunk a few vials of liquid bread, an elixir of condensed nutrition, while it still had the chance. It was ultimately little more than an annoyance. The growing hunger pangs were distracting, but Boxxy would need a lot more than 2 days to outright starve to death. For now, it could only grit its teeth and focus on its work, much like it had the past few weeks. The first half of the 48-hour test passed by without any significant issues, though it started feeling mentally exhausted around midnight on the second day. It had made tremendous progress over the last 35 hours, so it decided to indulge in 6 hours of sleep and put the finishing touches on its project the next morning. Unfortunately, it underestimated just how much energy it was lacking and overslept, despite Fizzy and Drea's best efforts to wake it. By the time it opened its eyes, it only had 5 hours left to finish its project. While not an impossible deadline, it would have to cut more corners than anticipated. Kira's audience swelled during this final stretch as they were all eager to see her wheel-shaped invention in action. Most had already deduced its intended purpose, and those that hadn't heard about it from the others Most had already deduced its intended purpose, and those that hadn't heard about it from the others. It was a self-driving wheel that used a compact electric motor for locomotion. A mana-infused gyroscopic stabilizer ensured the outer wheel spun around the engine in the middle rather than the opposite. The device was lined with a high-yield explosive paste that would detonate on impact or after traveling a certain distance. Naturally, Kira's creation was proof of concept at best. There were dozens of potential improvements one could make. For instance, the wheel's top speed and range could be improved by replacing the electric motor with a compact combustion engine, the fuel for which would add to its explosive yield. Similar and compounding results could be achieved by employing lighter materials and more potent payload. There was also plenty of room to add remote steering and magical guidance capabilities for greater control and accuracy. However, all of those upgrades required time, materials, and the technical expertise that neither Kira nor the monster underneath had access to. Boxxy shook its head to chase away such thoughts. While it was fun thinking up new ways to turn its enemies into red mist, it had an exam to pass. Just like it told Robin before, it had to focus on the task at hand instead of dreaming about the outcome. Thankfully, it seemed as though it would finish with a full hour to spare. The device was completely assembled and technically functional, but the gyroscopic stabilizer had a glitch that made the wheel veer hard left during its earlier test runs. Fixing the issue was proving tricky as the component in question was, unsurprisingly, not of its own design. It was Fizzy's, and it was relying on her to figure out what was wrong with it. At the same time, Jess was hovering around the golem with a cleaning rag. The radiant construct hadn't moved a millimeter since the trial started, and her lustrous frame had acquired a thin layer of dust and grime from all the oil-stained engineers coming in and out of the observation deck. The slightly obsessed gnome took this as an opportunity to give Fizzy that full-body scrub she'd mentioned previously, and the golem saw no reason to decline. That was when Boxxy caught a glimpse of Jess oiling up its favorite shiny out of the corner of its eye. What should have been an idle observation caused a spark of something resembling jealous rage. The annoyance and frustration brought on by the gaping chasm it called a stomach only amplified this feeling, and its demonic corruption fanned the flames even further. Boxxy somehow maintained control, but the distraction came at an inopportune time. While it was struggling to keep its temper in check, the line of communication facilitated by Plus and Drea hit a slight hiccup. The Parallel and the Stalker had been at it just as long as the Shapeshifter, so their focus wasn't exactly in peak condition. A lapse in concentration caused them to relay, "Plug the blue wire into the blue socket," to Boxxy instead of "blue wire into black socket." Were the shapeshifter thinking clearly, it would have recognized the instruction as potentially dangerous and questioned it. Unfortunately for the shapeshifter, circumstances had conspired to cloud its judgment at this critical juncture. The outcome was a short circuit that caused the gyroscope to suffer a catastrophic failure, releasing its battery's modest charge all at once. Good news, Kira was wearing insulated clothing. So the sudden jolt never reached her. Bad news, the blunder produced an electric arc that licked and ignited the explosive paste lining her wheel bomb's interior. The ensuing detonation rocked the entire chamber, filling it with smoke and fire while cracking the reinforced glass. The sudden development left the audience in a total state of shock. Yes, the redhead was working with volatile materials, but none expected her to slip when she was one step from the finish line. The sheer power of the blast also contributed to their surprise. Thankfully, one among them saw the disaster coming. Fizzy's enhanced vision allowed her to spot Boxxy's mistake precisely as it made it, but their line of communication was too slow to deliver. Fizzy's enhanced vision allowed her to spot Boxxy's mistake precisely as it made it, but their line of communication was too slow to deliver her warning in time. While she couldn't prevent the accident, she was able to react to it. Moments after the detonation, the golem used lightning warp to teleport herself through the damaged glass and inside the chamber. She immediately picked up on Boxxy's screams of agony, which took her by surprise. The shapeshifter's plundered fire affinity should have shielded it from the blast's heat, negating the majority of the damage. Yet when she reached the creature moments later, she found it violently convulsing on the floor with its true form exposed. Quick as a whip, the golem instantly deduced the cause. The shock wave from the blast must have caused the herpes to malfunction and release its charged payload directly into the shapeshifter's most vulnerable part. It wasn't just a simple misfire, given how it continuously discharged instead of delivering a single jolt. Not knowing what else to do, Fizzy transformed into her skirmisher mode and started fervently chanting holy light after holy light while instructing Null to figure out what went wrong and how to fix it. The thoroughly neutral personality needed only seconds to figure it out, though the news wasn't good.
What do you mean? Holy light! There has to be a way! There is not.
Null flatly stated.
The herpes was designed to utilize the subject's own magical reserves to power its functions. No repairs can be done while it is discharging, and it will continue discharging until it runs out of energy. Fuck that! Do you have any idea? Holy light! How much MP this guy has?
Sorry, guys. I might need to answer this. My bad. Nope, never mind. What's up, Sir Randy Marsh? Been a good stream so far. Just powering through, man. These are long-ass chapters. Long.
Approximately 7,800. Not what I meant!
It was enough energy to continuously electrocute Boxxy's spine for 12 minutes straight, and that wasn't even factoring its MP recovery. Waiting until the herpes ran out of juice wasn't an option. Yes, Fizzy could theoretically spool up her engine of destruction and continuously pump healing into the monster, but Boxxy would be in excruciating agony the entire time, and she'd be the one responsible. That thought terrified her more than anything else had in a long while, and in her panic, the golem felt she had no choice but to take drastic action.
Shit! This better work!
She rapidly reconfigured herself, this time into her jet-toting assault mode. She flipped the convulsing creature onto its face and popped out her new form's built-in forearm blades. She pinned the creature under one foot and stabbed into its back near the neck. The impromptu surgery successfully struck the herpes control unit under the monster's skin, rendering the device inoperable. Good news, Boxxy finally stopped shaking and was still breathing. Bad news, it was completely knocked out. Even worse news, the test chamber's emergency vents were now active and sucking away the thick smoke. With Kira's protective equipment burnt and shredded, there was nothing to obscure the shapeshifter's true form from all the onlookers. Even if they weren't there, emergency crews would surely flood into the chamber any second and notice the very obvious monster on the floor.
Miss Morgana, are you all right?
Fizzy's lightning-fast wits instantly painted an extremely uncomfortable picture. Its true self exposed, Boxxy would have no choice but to wipe Redbolt Dynamics headquarters off the face of the map. No survivors. The golem didn't want that, but in the heat of the moment she could think of no way to prevent it other than killing the monster. It was a choice between causing irreversible damage to the craft she was so passionate about and ending the only living creature she actually cared for. Both outcomes were extremely undesirable, and the notion of being forced to pick one or the other escalated her panic to an all-encompassing dread. Though, if the flows of chaos forced her hand, then...
Fizzy! Look down! Fizzy! Look down!
Plus yelled in her skull. The golem's attention shifted to the monster laying immobile on the ground, and her eyes widened as its gangly skin rapidly shifted to the toned, supple flesh of Kira Morgana. Even the puncture wound at the base of its neck was sealed shut. It was just in time, too.
Here they are!
A dwarf healer arrived on the scene just as the smokescreen was clearing up and spotted them both.
Hurry it up already! You people are useless!
The man ran up and was immediately confused by the victim's state.
Huh? Was she not injured?
Of course she was, moron! I already healed her wounds!
Right, sorry ma'am. We'll take it from here.
All right, but watch it! You so much as jostle her and you'll find out what your own balls taste like!
It would appear that the worst-case scenario had somehow been avoided, though not entirely without casualties. Fizzy shortly found out that a certain blonde gnome had reflexively clung to her radiant frame when she was startled by Kira's accident. The golem hadn't noticed, and accidentally electrocuted Jess when she used lightning warp, leaving the meatbag in critical The golem hadn't noticed and accidentally electrocuted Jess when she used lightning warp, leaving the meatbag in critical condition similar to the redheads. Both were expected to make a full physical recovery, but only time would tell if the incident would have long-term psychological ramifications. It was well known within the artificer community that powerful electric jolts, such as those generated by the dynamo golem, could permanently affect a person's brain chemistry. Fizzy was rather worried when the healer reminded her of this, though only for Jess. She liked the meatbag, so the prospect of accidentally altering her personality was not tasty. On the other hand, while feigning otherwise on the surface, she wasn't at all concerned with Boxxy's mental well-being. The damage it suffered couldn't have been too severe, considering it had already regained consciousness and was merely pretending to be out cold to maintain its cover. At least, Fizzy assumed that's what happened. It was the only logical explanation for how it was able to take on Kira's form. Yes, the creature was a shape-shifting savant, but even Boxxy had to abide by certain physical limitations. The flows of chaos have returned to their default causal state. A doppelganger's flesh could not alter its form without a will to guide it.
All right.
that is it for today. Thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with me as I narrated this. I only have 15 minutes left until 3 o'clock, which is my meeting time, so we might as well just stop here. Tomorrow, I'm not streaming, but the day after, so Friday, I'm streaming at least one more time. Looks like I'm probably going to be doing 2 more days, Friday and Monday. But watch out for updates, watch out for notifications. Be sure to subscribe to the Sound Booth Theater newsletter. Be sure to try out the Sound Booth app. Be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel. And tell all your friends and family about this show. Maybe not this one because it's ELLC, so it's fucked up. But, you know what I mean. I hope you guys have a good day. And tonight we have Sound Booth Theater Live. Don't forget about that. So that's another stream tonight at 7 p.m. Central. We're going to have Tavaga from Prophecy Approved Companion, the writer from Prophecy Approved Companion, on. And I think Annie will be interviewing her. And we have a little sketch for our cold open that Tavaga's written. So that'll be fun. But yeah, that's about it. Hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Hope to see you later tonight. And bye-bye for now.